today we're going to talk about the book of Acts. Now, just a discussion briefly. Do you now this book was written by, do you know who?
By Paul?
Luke.
I don't know.
The
So
apostle.
you're teaching me.
He's actually not an apostle. He's just a follower of Yeshua whose name is Luke. He's a doctor. And he is from a Gentile country. The area of Rome, I understand, from my understanding. And he is writing to someone who hired him. His name is Theophilus.
Okay.
Theophilus is a man from Rome. His name means lover of God. So he's probably a righteous Gentile who has heard about the God of the Jews and worships the God of the Jews. He probably attends a synagogue in the city of Rome, because remember, the Jews are everywhere.
Sure.
In the first century world, there are some Jews in the land of Judah, in what is now Israel, these Hebrew people are scattered throughout the world. The tribe of Judah is back in the land, and they have been for several hundred years. They came back. The tribe of Judah came back from the Babylonian captivity and re-inhabited Jerusalem and those towns around there and built it up, and they got the priesthood, and then Herod the Great builds the new temple. They got a new temple. The religion is flourishing again, and there are still tons of Jews and Hebrews scattered throughout the world, meeting on Fridays and Saturdays in their Sabbath synagogues all over the place. And you'll see as we start to read this that every time Paul left to go on a missionary journey, that's the first place he went, is to a Jewish synagogue, wherever he found them, and they were all over the world. Those were the people who were worshiping God as well as they could. They had the copies of the books of Moses. They were meeting every Sabbath day, and they were reading the scriptures. And that's where Paul went every single time, to say, hey, you guys are the people of God. I got a new message from God for you. Here's the new deal.
Nice.
Not a new deal, but here's the new revelation.
Now, as my understanding is, Acts is the description of how the Christianity religion began and how it formed, and it's kind of in this entire chapter it talks about how that was formed.
Well, and yes, you're absolutely right, and I think that the big image of the book of Acts that I think is what's going on here is that you got to remember, in the larger plan of our God, that he had made promises to them, put them into covenant with him, they were married. They were married. When Moses came down from the mountain and God spoke the 10 Commandments, and all the people said, shut up, we don't want to hear you anymore, we're going to die. This is too scary. Moses, you go up to the mountain and talk to God and let him tell you everything, and then you come and tell us, because if he talks to us again, we're going to die. Whatever he says, we'll do it. We don't even know what it is that he's going to say, but he's obviously a powerful God. He just completely destroyed the Egyptians. We are walking out into the desert. The greatest army in the whole world has just been completely devastated. We're free. We've been slaves. Now we're totally free. And we trust this God. Whatever he tells you to tell us, we're going to do it. And so that was on the Day of Atonement, when God told Moses, tell the people to stay down on the mountain, don't touch the mountain or they will die. Okay, stay in your tents, get clean your clothes, clean your bodies, clean your minds, clean your hearts, because you got 2 days to prepare. On the third day, God's going to come down and talk to you and make this agreement with you. And they did, and that's a picture perfectly of some other stuff too, as we'll discover as we go along. But when he came down and gave them these instructions, and that was their marriage covenant. That's what it means to not take the Lord's name in vain, for no reason, for no purpose. Eat the communion and say, I love you, Jesus, and then run off and live your life however you want.
Right.
That is taking the Lord's name in vain. It means nothing. It's vanity.
Right.
You're taking his name and stamping it on your head or your hand, or you're wearing a Jesus bracelet, and it means nothing. You've taken his name in vain. And now he gives them these instructions, and they say, we are under covenant with you. We are going to do exactly what you say, and we believe you that you'll do exactly what you say, and we'll have this agreement. Well, Moses knew, and God told Moses in the book of Deuteronomy, you're about to die, and the people are going to lose their shit. They're going to worship false gods. They're going to abominate themselves every way possible.
Sure.
He warned Moses. They've promised to love me and do everything I said, but they're not going to do it. And when they don't do it, I'm going to scatter them. I'm going to do all of the blessings that I said I was going to give them. I'm going to give them to their enemies. And all the curses that I said I was going to do to their enemies, I'm going to do to them. I'm going to switch it around. And I'm going to scatter my people. Now, it seems interesting when you think about it from a theological standpoint. And this is what is the amazing thing about our God, is that even though we have an adversary, the devil, who is trying to screw things up like you and I were talking about,
sure,
God still works, and his plan works perfectly and according to plan 100%, even though man in his sinfulness does not do what he's supposed to do, even though Satan in his deceitfulness is trying to screw the whole thing up. It all works just perfectly according to plan. That is the power of our God.
Yeah.
And what he did was he said, my people who I've gathered into this area right here, the tiniest place in the whole planet, it's a tiny little area, I want them to be priests to the whole world. They're supposed to let the whole world know that I am God and how to worship me. If you will do what I tell you, you'll be a kingdom of priests.
Mm-hmm.
And when they didn't do it, he did something that was rather clever. But it seems terrible, but it worked. He took those people and he scattered them throughout the whole world. Now, we know what happens when we get a spanking.
Mm-hmm.
Normally,
sure,
we deserve the spanking, but we take the punishment, but we're not happy about it. Now, these Hebrews that have been scattered throughout the world, I believe that some of them knew what had happened. It's not an accident that we have been captured and defeated by the Assyrians and taken slaves, and they've scattered us all over the whole known world. It's not an accident. And then 100 years later, the Babylonians take the whole tribes of Judah captive and make them slaves. This is not an accident. This is exactly, and it is at that exact time that Daniel,
mm-hmm.
the prophet, is one of those who was taken into captivity in Babylon. And he says, I discerned through looking at the prophet Jeremiah that our captivity was just about over. He's been living in Babylon for some time, and the end of the captivity is coming. He studied the books of Moses and the prophet Jeremiah enough that God gave him the wisdom to know, here I am a slave in the city of Babylon, but our captivity is almost over. And it was at that moment he figured out, he read in the old books and found out, my God, this is exactly what Moses said would happen to us. And now that I figured that out, I can go to the prophets and figure out the judgments that they proclaimed against us. Mm-hmm. And he was able to figure it out. He was able to read those prophets and the books of Moses and say, oh my God, here I am sitting in Babylon, a slave. And my whole tribes before that had been scattered through the whole world a couple hundred years ago. This is all making sense. It's exactly like Moses said it would happen. So now he read what Moses said. When you get scattered throughout the whole land, if you will then turn your hearts and follow my commands and do what I said, then I will gather you. And so that's exactly what he did. He threw himself on his face and he began to cry out to God. I have no idea what I'm supposed to